I can't help thinking of all these three programs that have been going since 2007, 2008. And there are a few. In fact, we received an email during the webinar from Virginia, who has a rather large towing incentive program. I think Ohio mentioned that they do, but there's only a few more. There's not many. So, and to me, this is a no-brainer. Everybody, no-brainer. So, but one thing that Deanna, I just wanted to catch you while you have on screen here right now. We have some other questions we'll get to in a second, but you're able to go after the responsible party to get some of the towing incentive funds. So that's interesting. So that's something. The only thing that are you guys working on getting it back to your program though? It goes to the general fund, did you say that?
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part of it, because the way our state works is it has to go to the general fund. And so and there are ways that we can extract it, and even if we parlayed it and rolled it back into maintenance, that would be good, or even back into this program. It's definitely something that we're looking into right now.
Yeah, but when you're going after funds, you can say, "Hey, look, we don't get the money back, but at least we bring it back to the state." So
yes, and and hopefully the Department of Transportation in some form. Yeah.
There you go. So good. Okay, so we have some questions here. Yeah, I'll start with Dolores. Can you confirm? Please confirm that the 90-minute clearance time threshold starts with the notice to proceed, which is given on scene. Dolores, have you made it back yet?
I think Dolores is still stepped away for a bit.
I am here. I'm so sorry.
Yes, Dolores, please confirm that the 90-minute clearance time threshold starts at the notice to proceed, which is given once on scene. Just review that again.
Yeah, the 90-minute starts once notice to proceed is given. Once the heavy wrecker is on scene.
Once the equipment is on scene.
Yeah,
okay.
Once the equipment is on scene. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay. For Sean, from my good friend Russ Holt from Rhode Island, was the 2023-24 drop off in expected instances and resulting from funds to be spent due to coverage, regional changes, number of work zones, or something else? Sorry if I missed it, Russ.
So when we went and asked for the increase in funding, we only had the numbers for what had happened. So we had to do an estimate for the next few years based on the increase in the incidents. There was an average % increase per year that we had to present with our leadership to say, okay, if this trend continues, here's what it's going to cost. And we tried to stay very lean on the estimate, not go in and ask for $50 zillion, knowing we weren't going to need it. We tried to stay pretty true to the trend and the curve. So what you're seeing now is numbers that we had put in when we requested the money. And here we are 4 years later with better actual numbers.
Thanks, Sean. So we'll go right to this question since we're already talking about funding. Michael from New Jersey, also from Rhode Island, it wants to know about where do you get the incentive funds? I'm assuming it's state funding, that just state transportation DOT funding. But could each of the three of you, if you know the answer to that, chime in? Sean, you want to go first?
Yes, sir. This is state funds. We had to go before our executive workshop and our program planning workshop and submit a request for authorization to have the money directly allocated to the program and to spend it. And it's all state funds.
Okay. Deanna, you want to go? You can chime in on that.
sorry, it's state funds as well for Washington State.
And I'm guessing the same thing with Dolores, Georgia.
Yes, same here.
Yeah, so, you know, the argument needs to be made, which these states have obviously done, and several others, that it's a, you know, it's a cost of doing business, and it's a valuable cost of doing business with, I think Georgia had something like 23-to-1 cost benefit if you want to calculate all the, you know, the issues that, you know, that go when you have a metropolitan area or any area gridlocked, right? Gridlocked. So, you know, it's just, to me, it's a good cost of doing business. And I love the fact that, you're able to go after the responsible party, in Washington State, just like if they hit your guardrail, you go after the responsible party. And if, so it's very similar to how that works. So, I guess Chris Reed is looking for someone from West Virginia who would like to discuss the advantage or disadvantage of creating a trip program in the state. I don't know if you got an answer to that, Chris, but we called it out here, and we can put you in touch with them if we hear about anybody. I guess David Strawn was curious about how they how they document that wearing of the vest item, you know, wearing of the safety items. Is there any requirement that they, how is that, how is, I guess the question is, is that how is the, you know, how is it verified? And you know, that they're wearing the safety vest. I guess Marty Ledge said that there are usually, you know, safety service patrol operators, hero operators on scene that, you know, will push them along, and then you don't get paid if you violate the standards. Is that, anyone want to speak to that for a second? How do you confirm that all measures are being taken safety wise?
You know, that's a really good, that's a great question. Because as right away, I'm looking at our MIT handbook, and it doesn't really talk about personal protective safety wear. And so, that is, they all wear it, but there's not that criteria for it or that requirement for it. And within ours, the only denial would be is if you didn't meet the 90-minute rule or the 90-minute clearance time, or you didn't satisfy all the requirements, the 5 pictures, turning it in within 5 days, and then the CAD clearance, which is the 90 minutes. So, but that is definitely something I'm going to look into, because I think, that could be problematic if we've got folks out there without the required, reflective vests and equipment that they need to protect themselves.
Thanks, Deanna. Let's see, what else do we have? Not sure I understand this question, but John Lionel Swift, would it be better for the supervisor to be independent of the TOA? I'm sure I understand the question, but anyone understand? Want to answer that? Try to answer that. Okay. No
I think I asked a follow-up question to him about who, when you say supervisor, are you talking about the supervisor, you know, the incident command on scene? Are you talking about the supervisor for the
yeah.
towing company? Are you talking about the supervisor for the DOT? It would help to know that.
So, Mr. Swift, if you have that clarification, try to answer it. So, I guess we could talk about this for a second. I think I know the answer, but I'm there was some comments about minimum equipment. Now, I'm sure there's very strict equipment requirements that go along with each of these programs. Is that safe to say? Dolores, you want to chime in on that one?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Dolores, tell them to leave you alone there. does the, the program come with a pretty strict requirements for equipment that they must have?
Yes, we have in our specs, we have a list of equipment that all our towers must maintain in the yard. And upon qualifying into the program, all of the yards are inspected. And our program is managed by our a STEMS program, which is managed by our Atkins team, and members of the Atkins team go to each one of the yards and they inspect all of that. All of the equipment is maintained by the each one of the TRIP qualified towers. And then a TRIP, we have a TRIP sticker that is provided and attached to each one of the equipment for each one of the equipment qualified that would respond to all of the scenes. So and that all of those all of that is maintained as part of our specs, and that is maintained on our time task force page.
Thank you, Dolores.
Mhm.
So Angela had asked, have you tracked secondary crashes with or without incentivized towing? I think I know the answer to this. Does anyone have a response to that?
We track secondary crashes in general, but specific to a risk event, the data exists. It's just taking the time to go back and link it up, because you got a SunGuide event number for each incident and risk event. You can tie it to it.
Okay. So,
So Paul,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I have a question. There was a question earlier that asked Dolores to clarify when the start of the clock was for their incentivized towing program in Georgia. I'm wondering whether Florida and Washington State have different criteria by which to start the clock for their incentivized towing programs. And, have they ever thought about changing those criteria?
I can go first, Sean, if you want it. So Washington State, we do actually, it's when they're on scene and ready to begin. So it's the same as Georgia. The problem with having the clock start when you call them is they're going to be in traffic. So, that's the challenge is just getting to the scene. So we felt in Washington State that the clock starts when they get there and all their equipment is there and the necessary staff is there. And then that's when the clock starts. And then when the roadway is cleared is when the clock stops. So in theory, the load could be moved to the shoulder of the highway and they're just strapping it down. But the road, as long as the roadway is open and cleared, that's considered clear.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
to me, being the cynical person that I am after many, many years in government, it doesn't matter to me. It's just at some point the clock is ticking, folks. And if you want to make the extra cash, you gotta rock and roll and get it done. We've all seen too many crashes that go on that can get dragged on for a long, long time. But knowing that the clock is ticking, regardless of when it starts, is the key, I think, and especially for these for these heavy companies that trying to recuperate for their $1 million
Yeah, their extra equipment. So I want to add, I mentioned we had a major incident in Seattle yesterday where the tanker rollover. The tow operator actually offered to drag it off the highway, and but that would have just created this, the slug trail of of diesel that the tanker was carrying. And so, you know, it's also about what's the right thing to do. So then if you drag it off and he does meet the 90-minute clearance time, you know, that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to pause the timer, let them clear the tank, and then relocate it. So, I mean, it's really, I talk about, you know, that collaboration, that communication efforts, because at this point now, environmental's on scene, ecology's on scene. And so it's the right thing to do. And I know sometimes in a sense of urgency and panic, we look at what's the quickest thing, but sometimes the quickest isn't always the right answer. So it's, we don't want to penalize the RTTO for us making a decision to no, we're gonna empty the tanker, or let's collaboratively empty the tanker and then relocate it.
We
Yeah,
have
I
a,
think- Go ahead,
we
Sean.
have
No,
a-
go ahead.
we have a measure in our contracts where you have an NTP pause. So let's say you have the notice to proceed, you start doing work, and you discover a person that's entrapped, or there's a hazmat issue, or there's a safety issue. The on-scene incident command says, nope, timeout, stop. And NTP is paused until that situation is addressed. They can allow the risk contractor to reposition their vehicles, and then when they're set to resume work, start it back up, and the clock starts.
Yeah.
So it's,
Hey,
You know,
Paul, hold on. Hey, Paul, I have to interrupt because you only have 5 minutes left, and I think this question is very relevant and important. Well, first of all, great presentations by all three, but I did not hear, and maybe this is something for a future Talking Tim, did not hear much in the way or anything in the way of coordination with Federal Motor Carrier inspectors for these types of incidents, because when there are major CMV or really any commercial motor vehicle crashes, from what I understand, those inspectors should be called simultaneously to respond to these incidents because they have a significant authority or role in the investigation for obvious reasons. If, you know, ultimately, you know, if there was any defective equipment or whatever the case may be. So that was a question that came to mind. And I just wanted to throw it out there to all three of them.
So Washington State we have a whole commercial vehicle division with the Washington State Patrol. So they would respond. That's who would be pulled in when there's a commercial vehicle incident that it occurs. It's outside of the MIT requirements. And so it's a combination, and I'm not exactly sure how they call that in, but they do have their own commercial vehicle investigations that come on scene.
So do you, well, that's good, Deanna. I guess where I'm going to is that all states should have a good relationship with the leads for those motor carrier inspectors and be able to have them in your cell phone. In DC, I did, and coordinating with Maryland and Virginia as well. I just want to throw that out there. Thank you.
I think that's a great recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most state patrols, at least state patrols, have a commercial vehicle section that, you know, is the response and takes it from there when it comes to FMCSA or anybody else. So I know the states that I'm familiar with that do that.
There was a really bad one early this morning in the state of Missouri that I think still has I-35 shut down. They don't know if the driver fell asleep or was under the influence, but he took out some major infrastructure, including a column of a bridge. And he's in the hospital barely alive, but it was a tractor trailer, and it's pretty horrible incident this morning. So anyway, thank you. Great job.
So you see here, thanks, Jim. You see here that VDOT has an extensive trip program, and they have a whole way where they start the clock. So I guess there were a few other questions in here, but I think we covered most of them, right? Vishali, did we cover most
I
of
think
them?
we did cover most of them. There's some follow-up questions. We talked about cost recovery with insurers. Do all 3 states do that, or is that something that just Washington State does? If we could have a quick answer.
Oh, we do it. The the district has to put together a package with photos and all the documentation and submit it through our general counsel's office, and then they go after the RP's insurance, or can.
Dolores, how about Georgia?
Georgia goes after insurance for any damage to state property, but then the towers handle insurance for the recovery on their end. We are not involved in any payouts that have to do with any towing. They handle all their payments on their own.
So the incentives that you deliver to the tow operators are not pursued by the RP insurers?
No, that's just an incentive for participation in the program. But then all payments for the recovery are handled by the towers. And the insurance companies.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, so Washington State goes after the incentive piece of it based on their losses. Okay, so that's a little different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're at 3 o'clock. Don't want to take any more time. It was a great webinar, I think, today, not just because I hosted it, but I think we had some great presenters, great information. I think that I really liked today's program and the speakers and everything. So, and the conversation that was happening in the chat pod and the questions, and I think we hit the mark today. So, thanks everybody. Really appreciate you all, and thanks, a special thanks to our speakers today. Thanks again. Take care, guys.